Ethan Brooks woke up every morning before the sky even started to turn blue. The air was always cold at that hour, and the ranch fields looked like a huge, silent sea of grass. He liked those quiet moments, when the world still felt asleep. It made him feel calm, even though inside he often felt lonely. For years, his life had followed the same routine: feed the cattle, clean the stables, check the fences, repeat the same things again and again. People in town knew him as the rancher who worked hard and never complained. But no one knew how empty his days felt once the work ended. He had grown up on this land, learned everything from his father, and promised to keep the ranch running even after his parents passed away. The ranch gave him food, money, and purpose, but it did not give him company. He had friends in town, but most had families and busy lives. Ethan never found someone to build a future with. He tried a few times, but nothing ever lasted. Some women said he was too quiet, too focused on work, or too unsure about big decisions. He understood their point, but a small part of him wished someone would look at him and see the man he really was: loyal, gentle, and willing to give everything to the right person. That summer afternoon, something different happened. It started as a normal day. Ethan was driving his old pickup truck back toward the ranch after picking up supplies. The sun was high. The heat shimmered above the road, and dust rose behind his tires. Then, he saw a small car parked on the side. At first, he didn't think much of it. Cars broke down all the time on that long road. But when he slowed down, he noticed a woman standing beside the open hood, staring at the engine like she wished it would fix itself. She was wearing simple clothes, dusty boots, and her hair was tied loosely, as if she had rushed to leave somewhere. She looked tired, like she had driven for hours without rest. Ethan stopped his truck and stepped out. "Car trouble?" he asked in a calm voice. She looked up suddenly, surprised to see someone. But her eyes softened when she saw it was just a rancher trying to help. "I think something's wrong with the engine," she said. Her voice sounded gentle, but also worn out, like she had been holding stress inside for too long. Ethan leaned under the hood and checked the parts one by one. It didn't take long to notice the problem. "Your engine overheated. Probably been running too hot for miles," he said. She sighed, her shoulders dropping. "I was hoping it would last a bit longer. I'm new here. I'm still learning the area." He offered her a small smile. "Well, you're lucky I drove by. Let me help cool it down." She thanked him quietly and stepped aside. While Ethan worked, he kept noticing small things about her: how she twisted her fingers nervously, how her eyes kept drifting away, how she seemed lost, not only on the road, but maybe in life too. When he finally got the engine cooled enough to start again, she seemed relieved, in a way that felt deeper than just car trouble. "My name's Ethan," he said, wiping his hands. "Lena," she replied softly. "Lena Ward." He nodded politely. But for some reason, he didn't walk away. His feet stayed rooted in place. Something about her presence made him pause, made him curious. She looked like someone who had been carrying a lot alone. She told him she had recently moved into a small rental cabin a few miles away. She didn't explain much more. But Ethan didn't push. She thanked him again, gave a tired smile, and got back into her car. As she drove away, Ethan watched the small car disappear into the distance, longer than he meant to. Something inside him felt different, like a quiet spark he hadn't felt in years. In the next few days, their paths kept crossing. First at the market, where she was trying to find ingredients for a simple meal, and ended up asking him which vegetables stayed fresh the longest. Then at the feed store, where she seemed confused about which supplies she needed for her little cabin. And then at the old cafe, where she sat alone by the window, sipping tea as if she wanted to disappear inside the warm cup. Every time he saw her, she smiled small, shy, gentle. And every time, Ethan felt something warm in his chest. She spoke politely, But there was always something behind her eyes, something she was trying to hide. Sadness? Fear? Maybe exhaustion from life? He couldn't tell, but he noticed. One evening, after finishing his work early, he decided to stop by the lake near the edge of town. It was his usual place when he wanted to think. The water usually reflected the colors of the sky, and the breezes often calmed him. But that day, he saw someone sitting on the wooden bench, facing the water. It was Lena. She sat still, her back slightly hunched, her hair falling over her shoulders. She looked fragile in the soft evening light, as if the world had been too hard on her for too long. When Ethan stepped closer, he heard a soft sniff. She had been crying. He didn't call her name, just walked slowly until she noticed him. When she lifted her face, she quickly wiped her eyes and tried to look okay. But he had already seen the sadness. "Are you all right?" he asked gently, not forcing any answer. She hesitated, then shook her head. "Just a long day," she whispered. But it didn't sound like the truth. Ethan didn't sit too close to her, only close enough to show he was there if she needed someone. The lake was quiet, the sky turning orange and pink. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. But it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt like two people sharing silence, because words were too heavy. After a while, Lena spoke first. "Sometimes life becomes too much, and I don't know how to handle everything at once." Her voice cracked a little, and Ethan wanted to say something comforting, but he wasn't good with deep words. So he said the only honest thing he could. Her eyes widened slightly. Maybe surprised someone would say that. She looked at him for a long moment, as if trying to understand why he cared. Then she gave a tiny, weak smile, the kind that showed gratitude mixed with doubt. They talked a little after that, nothing too personal. Just simple things like the weather, the town, the lake. But the way she talked felt different this time. She was more open, more vulnerable. And Ethan listened quietly, never interrupting, never judging. When she finally stood up to leave, she told him softly, "Thank you for sitting here." He nodded. "Anytime." As she walked away, Ethan watched her again, feeling something shift inside him. The loneliness he had lived with for years felt different now. Lighter, as if someone had finally noticed the empty space in his heart and stood quietly beside it. That night, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about her. Her tired smile, her quiet voice, the way she tried to hide her pain. He knew she needed support, someone steady, someone who wouldn't run away when things became difficult. He didn't know it yet. But that simple evening at the lake was the moment their lives gently began to move toward each other. A moment that would change everything in the months to come, in ways neither of them expected. The days after their first quiet evening by the lake were different for Ethan. He found himself thinking about Lena more than he expected. Every time he passed the small rental cabin where she stayed, a subtle curiosity and concern stirred inside him. He wanted to check if she was all right, but he didn't want to intrude. At the same time, he wanted to see her, to hear her voice, and to know that she was safe. It was a new feeling for him. He had spent years alone, letting life follow its routine without questioning what was missing. Now, that missing piece had appeared, and it felt fragile, like it could vanish if he acted wrong. Lena's life, on the other hand, was quieter than most people realized. She had moved to the small Montana town for peace, away from a life that had often been unfair. She wanted to start over, but the weight of past hurts still lingered. Some mornings she woke up wishing she could disappear, feeling unsure about her decisions and afraid that she would repeat mistakes from her past. Moving to a new town had seemed simple at first. New streets, new people, new beginnings, but it wasn't easy. She had to face herself every day, and sometimes it felt like that fight was exhausting. When Ethan appeared in her life, she felt a mix of relief and fear. Relief, because he seemed steady and kind. Fear, because she had never trusted easily. but she couldn't deny that his presence made the days feel warmer. Even small gestures like bringing groceries to her cabin or holding a door open left her feeling seen in a way she hadn't felt in years. One afternoon, Ethan offered to help carry a crate of supplies up to her cabin. She had been struggling with it all morning, trying to manage the boxes on her own. When he arrived without knocking, she felt surprised. "You brought too much," she said lightly, trying to mask the gratitude in her voice. "I didn't see it as too much," he replied, smiling gently. "You shouldn't have to carry all this alone." The walk to the cabin was quiet, but it was the kind of quiet that didn't feel uncomfortable. The wind rustled through the trees, and the distant sound of cattle added a soft rhythm to their steps. Lena noticed that Ethan's presence had a calming effect, though she wasn't ready to admit it out loud. Inside the cabin, they unpacked the boxes together. She handed him items, and he smiled when she paused, handing him a can of tomatoes. "I haven't had much practice with these things," she admitted. "I'm learning." "You're doing fine," he said simply, and somehow those words meant more than he could have guessed. Lena felt a flicker of warmth in her chest. No one had told her she was doing fine in a long time. Usually, people expected her to be perfect, fast, or confident. And when she wasn't, they left. But Ethan's words felt different, steady, without judgment, and patient. Over the next few days, their connection deepened slowly. Ethan would occasionally stop by, not always to help, sometimes just to talk. They discussed small things, weather, cattle, townspeople, but those small things built trust. Lena found herself opening up in bits and pieces, sharing stories of her past, though never the full weight of it. Ethan listened without interruption, never forcing her to explain more than she was comfortable with. That patient listening became a quiet anchor for her. One evening, as they were sitting on the porch of her cabin watching the sun set, Lena finally said something that made Ethan pause. Her voice was soft, almost vulnerable. "Ethan, I need honesty. If you care about me, I want to know it. Please, hurry up and tell me. I can't handle half-truths anymore." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He had been waiting for the right moment. But hearing her say it aloud was different. He realized that she wasn't asking for a promise. She was asking for truth, a clear acknowledgement of feelings, so she could trust again. I care about you, Lena," he said carefully, choosing his words. "More than I've cared about anyone in a long time. I want you to feel safe, not rushed. But I need you to know, I want to be here for you." She studied him for a long moment. Her eyes were wide and searching, like she was trying to read everything in his expression. Then she nodded slowly. A small smile appeared, soft and genuine. "Thank you," she whispered. I think I want that too." It was a fragile step forward, but it was real. That evening, as they sat together in comfortable silence, a quiet understanding passed between them. They both knew it wouldn't be easy. Trust wasn't instant. Healing wasn't instant. But for the first time, they felt that life might allow them to try, together. Over the next week, they spent more time together, and Ethan noticed small changes in Lena. She laughed more easily now, sometimes catching herself smiling at nothing. She started cooking meals for both of them when he stopped by, and she would sometimes ask for advice about small things on the ranch. These moments were small, but they were significant. She was learning to trust that someone could be steady, dependable, and kind without asking for anything in return. One day, Lena confessed to Ethan why she had been so cautious. "I've been hurt before. People left me when I needed them most. I don't want to go through that again. But with you, I feel, I don't know, safer, maybe. Like I can try again." Ethan nodded, understanding fully. He didn't try to say it would be easy or that she didn't need to be afraid. He only said, I'll be here. Whatever comes, I won't leave you alone in it." Those words mattered more than he knew. Lena felt a weight lifting inside her, a piece of her heart she had kept locked, finally feeling a little lighter. She wasn't ready to fully open herself yet, but the thought that someone was willing to wait and stand by her made her hope cautiously. As the days turned into weeks, they faced small challenges that tested their budding connection. Lena struggled with paperwork for her cabin rental, and Ethan helped her organize it. A sudden storm damaged part of her fence, and Ethan spent hours helping her repair it. Through each task, Lena saw patience, dedication, and care in action. She began to realize that love wasn't always about grand gestures. It could be quiet, steady, and shown through actions rather than words. One late evening, while the sun had set and the sky turned deep blue, "I don't know if I can say this, but I feel like I'm ready to try. Not everything, just trying to let someone in again." Ethan reached out and held her hand, gentle but firm. "You can take all the time you need. I'll be here, every step." In that moment, a bond began to grow stronger. A quiet understanding, a willingness to be patient, and a shared desire to heal. They didn't know what the future held, but they knew they could face it together, slowly, carefully, and honestly. By the end of the second month, the small routines they had created became comforting. Ethan would often bring fresh milk or eggs from his ranch, and Lena would prepare a simple meal for both of them. They would sit on the porch, watching the horizon, talking about small things like the weather or animals. But it wasn't the topics that mattered, it was the act of being together, the steady presence of someone who cared. The town began to notice too. People whispered about the quiet rancher and the woman who seemed happier than before. But Ethan and Lena didn't care about gossip. They only cared about each other's hearts. One morning, after a heavy rain, Lena looked out the window and said softly, "I never thought life could feel peaceful like this. I used to believe happiness was something you had to chase, and now it feels like it's just here, quietly, waiting." Ethan smiled, not needing to add anything. He understood completely. Happiness wasn't loud or dramatic. It could be found in the small gestures, the quiet companionship, and the trust that two people chose to give each other, step by step. And so, as the days passed, their connection deepened. They shared laughter, simple conversations, and even silence. They learned to rely on one another, to trust slowly, and to be patient. The unspoken promise of support and honesty became the foundation of something neither of them had dared to hope for: love, built on trust, respect, and shared courage. This was just the beginning. A beginning full of quiet hope, growing trust, and the fragile, beautiful steps of two people learning to open their hearts again. Weeks passed, and the bond between Ethan and Lena grew stronger with each passing day. Their mornings started earlier and ended later, yet neither of them minded. Ethan would tend the cattle and repair fences, while Lena would help in small ways, feeding the younger animals or bringing water. It wasn't about the work itself. It was about the shared moments, the quiet companionship, and the feeling that someone was there for them no matter what. But life, as it often does, had its tests. One sunny afternoon, Lena received a letter that made her heart skip a beat. She hesitated before opening it, as if fearing what she might find inside. When she read the contents, her hands shook slightly. A man from her past had arrived in town. Someone she had hoped never to see again. He hadn't come for kindness. The memories he brought were heavy unanswered questions, broken trust, and moments that had left her wary of letting anyone close. Lena's first instinct was to retreat, to pack her things, and leave the town altogether. She wanted to run back to solitude, to the life she had known, safe from disappointment and fear. But when she looked up, Ethan was standing at the doorway, calm and patient, observing her from a distance. I don't want him to ruin this, she whispered, more to herself than to him. Ethan stepped closer, gently. He won't, he said. Whatever happens, you're not alone. You don't have to face it by yourself. For the first time in weeks, Lena felt a wave of relief. She realized she didn't have to escape to safety. Safety had come to her in the form of someone who cared enough to stay. She took a deep breath, steadying herself, and decided to face the challenge. The next few days were difficult. The man lingered in town, asking questions, trying to pull her into old conflicts. Lena found herself anxious, worried, and sometimes on the verge of panic. But Ethan never faltered. He stood by her, patient and unwavering. He helped her manage the conversations, supported her decisions, and reminded her that her life was hers to live now, not dictated by the mistakes of the past. One evening, after the man finally left town, Lena turned to Ethan. Her eyes were soft, filled with gratitude and a hint of vulnerability. I don't know how to thank you, she said. You didn't just help me face him. You helped me face my fear. Ethan smiled quietly. You didn't need anyone to fight your battles for you. You needed someone to remind you that you didn't have to do it alone. Everyone. Krustrobbs. Krustrobbzaun. Everyone. Krustrobbzaun. 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 Everyone. Krustrobbzaun. Her lips curved into a small smile. In that moment, Lena realized something important. Trust wasn't about ignoring fear. It wasn't about pretending the past didn't exist. Trust was about choosing someone to stand beside you, even when the shadows of yesterday threatened to return. From that point, their lives became even more intertwined. Lena moved some of her belongings to the ranch, creating a small space where she felt comfortable and safe. It wasn't permanent yet, but it was a step toward a life that she hadn't dared imagine before. Ethan watched as she slowly began to make the ranch feel like home, placing small decorations in the cabin, arranging her things just so, and adding touches that made the space hers. Life on the ranch wasn't always easy. Storms would come, damaging fences and forcing Ethan to spend long hours repairing them. Supplies occasionally ran low, and money was sometimes tight. But these challenges didn't discourage them. In fact, they brought them closer. Lena learned how to handle small tasks herself, gaining confidence with each success, while Ethan continued to guide her patiently. They celebrated small victories together. From a successfully mended fence to a thriving vegetable garden. Each achievement strengthened their bond. Each shared challenge reminded them that together they were stronger. One calm autumn afternoon, as the leaves turned gold and the wind carried a crisp chill, Lena sat on the porch, looking out over the fields. She felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. Ethan joined her quietly, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. You've changed a lot, he said softly. Not in a bad way, but you seem lighter now. She smiled, letting herself feel the truth of his words. I think I've been holding on to too much for so long, and I didn't realize how heavy it had become until I started letting it go. Ethan nodded. It's not easy, but you're doing it, and you're not alone anymore. The words were simple, but they carried weight. Lena felt a warmth spread through her chest. It wasn't the kind of rush one reads about in novels or sees in movies. It was steadier, calmer, a warmth built from trust, care, and consistent support. It was the kind of warmth that could last a lifetime. Weeks turned into months, and their connection grew deeper. They found joy in simple routines, morning coffee on the porch, repairing fences together, feeding the animals, or just sitting side by side in comfortable silence. They learned each other's habits, quirks, and preferences. Ethan learned that Lena liked her tea a little stronger in the morning, while she learned that he preferred quiet walks at sunset to think about the day. But life wasn't only about comfort. There were moments of doubt and fear. Lena occasionally felt the weight of her past, the fear that happiness couldn't last. She worried about trusting too much, about being hurt again. Ethan noticed these moments and never forced her to push past them too quickly. Instead, he offered patience, presence, and quiet reassurance. He never demanded she move faster than she was ready. One evening, during a particularly vibrant sunset, Lena turned to Ethan. Her eyes were full of emotion, a mixture of hope and hesitation. "Ethan, I don't know if I can fully say it yet, but I want to try. I want to trust again, and I want to try with you." Ethan reached out and held her hands gently, feeling her fingers tremble slightly. "That's all I need," he said softly. "You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be ready for everything at once. I'll be here. We'll take it one day at a time." Axis. She let herself lean a little closer, finding comfort in his steady presence. For the first time in years, she felt that it was possible to believe in the future, to imagine a life where trust, care, and love weren't only words, but lived experiences. Their lives became a series of small, meaningful moments. Ethan would leave fresh milk or eggs on her porch, and Lena would leave baked bread or simple meals for him in return. They shared laughter over small mistakes, such as a bucket spilling water or an animal escaping the pen. They learned to rely on each other without fear. And slowly, the walls around Lena's heart began to crumble. Not all at once, but in quiet, steady progress. One rainy evening, after a long day of repairing a fence that had been damaged in a storm, Lena looked at Ethan and said quietly, "I never thought someone could be so patient with me." Ethan shrugged modestly. "I'm not perfect, but I care. That's what matters." She smiled, a real, genuine smile that reached her eyes. It was a small moment, but it carried weight. Lena realized that life didn't need to be perfect to feel full. It only needed honesty, patience, and the courage to open one's heart again. By the time autumn was ending, Lena felt a sense of belonging she had never known before. She was not only part of the ranch, but part of a shared life with Ethan. The future, once uncertain and frightening, now felt like a path she could walk without fear, step by step, with someone she could trust beside her. One calm night, sitting together under a blanket of stars, Lena whispered softly, almost to herself, "I never thought I could feel safe like this. But with you, I do." Ethan squeezed her hand gently. "And I'll keep you safe. Every day. No matter what comes." In that quiet, star-filled night, their hearts connected more deeply than words could ever express. They were no longer just two people passing time. They were two people choosing each other, day by day, through patience, trust, and courage. And though they didn't know what the future would bring, they understood one simple truth. Together, they could face anything. Together, they could turn the unthinkable step, letting someone into their life, into the foundation of a life filled with care, love, and hope. The months that followed were filled with quiet routines, small victories, and the kind of happiness that came from knowing someone was always there. Lena had settled into life at the ranch more than she ever expected. She woke up with the sun, helped Ethan with chores, tended to the garden, and even learned a few tricks for caring for the younger animals. Each day, she grew more confident, more comfortable, and more aware that she was building a life she could be proud of. One where trust and kindness were constant, and the past no longer held the same power over her heart. Ethan watched her carefully. He noticed the little things, the way she laughed when a calf ran past too quickly, how her hands became steady while repairing the fences, or how her eyes sparkled when she discovered something new in the fields. He didn't say much, because he knew she didn't need words all the time. His quiet presence, his steady care, and his patience were all the assurance she needed. And each day, he felt a growing certainty that his life had changed forever because she was in it. It wasn't long before the town noticed their connection. People whispered about the quiet rancher and the woman who now seemed brighter, lighter, and more alive than when she first arrived. But Ethan and Lena didn't care about gossip. They were focused on the life they were building together, brick by brick, day by day. They had learned that true bonds were built on patience, shared effort, and understanding, not on dramatic gestures or grand displays. One autumn evening, as the sun began to set behind the mountains and the sky was painted with shades of orange and pink, Lena and Ethan sat on the porch, watching the cattle settle down for the night. The air was crisp, and the faint scent of earth after rain lingered. Lena leaned her head on Ethan's shoulder, feeling the warmth and steadiness he always provided. "I never thought I'd feel this. At home," she whispered, her voice soft and full of emotion. "You are home," Ethan replied simply, wrapping an arm around her gently. "And you always will be." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, but they were tears of gratitude, of relief. She had learned that happiness didn't always roar. Sometimes it whispered softly, in moments of trust, laughter, and quiet companionship. A few weeks later, Ethan decided it was time to take the next step, not because anyone pressured him, but because he knew in his heart that their lives were ready for it. He wanted to make a promise to Lena that went beyond daily routines, small talks, and shared tasks. He wanted to solidify what they already knew: that they were stronger together, that they trusted each other, and that they wanted to face the future side by side. He planned a simple gesture, something meaningful, but without any extravagance. On a calm afternoon, with the mountains glowing softly in the distance, he led Lena to a spot near the cattle pens, where the earth smelled of hay and grass. It was quiet, private, and perfectly suited for the moment. Lena looked at him curiously, sensing the importance of what was about to happen. "Ethan, what is it?" she asked gently. He took her hands in his, feeling the familiar warmth and softness. His heart raced, but his voice remained steady. "Lena, these months with you, they've changed my life. I can't imagine waking up without you, sharing the days without you, or facing anything alone again. I want you in every part of my life, not just as someone I care about, but as my partner, my companion, my family." Lena's eyes widened, her breath catching slightly. She had expected tenderness, perhaps a declaration of care, but this was something more, something permanent, something life-changing. "Will you marry me?" Ethan asked softly, his eyes searching hers for the answer he already hoped to hear. For a long moment, Lena didn't speak. She only stared, feeling her chest fill with warmth and relief. Then, a small smile spread across her face, growing into one that lit her entire expression. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will." It wasn't a dramatic scene filled with fireworks or crowds. It was simple, quiet, and honest. And that simplicity made it perfect. It reflected everything they had built together: trust, patience, understanding, and love. They married a few weeks later, in a small outdoor ceremony behind the ranch house. Only close friends were present, people who had witnessed their journey and supported it quietly. The sun shone softly, filtering through the trees and casting golden light on the fields. Lena wore a simple dress, and Ethan wore his work shirt and boots, both smiling more brightly than they had ever smiled before. There was no grandeur, no unnecessary pomp, just two hearts choosing each other in the presence of a few who mattered most. The ceremony was filled with small, meaningful moments. They exchanged vows that spoke not of perfection, but of patience, commitment, and courage. They promised to stand by each other through storms and sunshine, to listen, to support, and to always choose one another. When they held hands at the end of the vows, Lena felt an overwhelming sense of peace. She had found a life that didn't require her to run, a life where she could trust completely, and a love that was steady, unwavering, and real. Life after the wedding didn't change dramatically, but it deepened in ways neither of them expected. They continued their routines on the ranch, but each shared moment now carried new significance. Breakfasts tasted warmer, chores felt lighter, and quiet evenings became treasures. They celebrated small victories, repaired fences, healthy livestock, successful harvests, not because the work was extraordinary, but because they faced it together. One rainy afternoon, as they sat by the fireplace in the cabin, Lena looked around at their life and realized something profound. "Ethan," she said softly, "I never thought I could be this happy. I thought happiness was something you had to chase, but now I see. It's here, quietly, in moments like this." Ethan smiled, his eyes full of warmth. "I've always believed happiness is found in patience, trust, and the people we choose to share our lives with. And you made that possible for me too." The rain tapped gently against the windows, the fire crackled softly, and for a moment, the world seemed perfectly still. Lena felt her heart full, not with excitement or drama, but with steady, enduring contentment. Seasons changed, but their bond remained constant. Winter brought snow-covered fields and long nights by the fire. Spring brought new life to the ranch, with green grass, blooming flowers, and the soft sounds of newborn animals. Through every season, they faced challenges, storms, illness in the livestock, and the occasional worry about the future. But together, they found solutions, shared burdens, and grew stronger. Every challenge reinforced what they already knew: that trust, patience, and steadfast care were the true foundation of their life. They didn't need extravagant adventures or dramatic declarations. They only needed each other, present and committed, day by day. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains and the sky turned shades of purple and gold, Lena sat on the porch beside Ethan. The world was quiet, the air filled with the soft chirping of crickets. She leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the steady heartbeat she had come to rely on. "Ethan," she said softly, "thank you. For everything. For staying. For trusting me. For making me feel safe again." He kissed the top of her head gently. "I don't need thanks. I only need you to know that I'm here, now, and always. That's enough for me." They sat together in silence, watching the fields, the cattle, and the horizon. In that quiet, Lena understood something she had never truly believed before: that love wasn't always loud, dramatic, or perfect. Love could be quiet, steadfast, and patient. Love could be built on trust, care, and the courage to open one's heart, even after years of fear. And in that moment, she realized they had built something rare and beautiful. They had found each other, not by chance, but by choosing to be patient, brave, and true. A life together wasn't always easy, but it was theirs, and that was more than enough. As night fell and the stars appeared one by one, Lena and Ethan sat hand in hand, hearts full and peaceful. They knew life would continue to bring challenges, but they also knew that they had everything they needed to face them each other. And so, their story, which began with quiet curiosity and small gestures, ended not with fireworks or fanfare, but with something far more meaningful: enduring love, unwavering trust, and the knowledge that sometimes the unthinkable steps we take, letting someone into our lives, allowing ourselves to trust again, lead to the greatest happiness we could ever imagine. They had found it together, quietly, patiently, and beautifully.